Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Amber Staynings, CEO of Bums on Seats and one inspirational human. Coming up on today's show, Amber highlights her number one reason to join hospitality.
There's also a couple of really good mentors in the industry like you and me, Phil, which I guess, if that doesn't entice you, then nothing will.
Phil eloquently sums up what we're all thinking. It's mental out there at the moment. And Amber reveals the best place in the world to apologise.
And he said, "You're the most polite person we've ever had in an ambulance," because I just kept apologising.
All that and so much more as we talk through Amber's incredible story and journey to date. Amber is a source of energy and inspiration throughout, and there's so much learning in here about listening to your body and mind and making sure that you look after the most important person in your life, you. A huge thank you to Amber for sharing her story so openly. Don't forget, we launch a brand new episode each week telling the amazing and always amusing stories from hospitality, so please remember to like, subscribe and review on whatever platform you're listening. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to the next episode of Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street. Since starting this humble little show back in April 2020, I've been connected with so many awesome humans and so many wonderful stories and journeys. Along the way, I've stumbled on some absolute gems, and today's guest categorically fits into that description. Currently the CEO and founder of Bums on Seats, which is definitely the best company name I've had on the show so far, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome to the show Amber Staynings.
Oh, Phil, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and what a great welcome.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome. And how are you anyway?
Do you know what? I think we were just chatting offline. I think anyone in hospitality at the moment, we are feeling the strain of how busy the industry is becoming. Everyone gearing up for Christmas. But that aside, and actually I love that time of year anyway. So I'm really good. Yeah, I'm really good. I feel in a good place to have a chat with you. I feel quite relaxed, which is nice for a Friday.
That's good. Yes, and that's the right frame of mind to be in. That's when all the best conversations happen. So yeah, but I'm with you 100% on board. It's mental out there at the moment.
It is, Phil. It really is. Why do you think it's so mental from your side?
Well, I'm in the world of recruitment, and there's one or two people missing from the industry at the moment, and everybody's recruiting like crazy. Yeah. So that's just keeping me very, very busy. But hey, after the year that we've had, I definitely will not complain.
Yeah, bring it on. Absolutely with you.
Yeah, so I really can't get rid of this frog today. I don't know what's going on. I've had too much coffee. That's probably what it is. I've completely destroyed my vocal cords. Where are you in the world today? Where are you recording this?
I'm actually at home at the moment. So I relocated to Guildford sort of 2.5 years ago. Just wanted to get out of the rat race of central London, which was a fantastic decision. And finally, actually this year, I feel like I can enjoy the lifestyle in Surrey, which is obviously far healthier and more wholesome than my lifestyle previously. So yeah, I'm right. Live from my flat.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, actually, that lifestyle thing was kind of one of the reasons why I reached out to you in the first place. I was trawling LinkedIn late one night, just going through the feed, and here was this wonderful little story that I'm really glad that I took the time to read, because otherwise we wouldn't be here having this conversation. But it was all centered around you, and you'd had a health scare. And the changes that you'd made. Now, I'm probably getting ahead of myself because we'll probably come on to this as part of the natural story in any case. But that's kind of one of the reasons. Well, it's the main reason why I wanted to reach out to you in the first place. But then, discovered that behind this is a human being with one hell of a purpose.
Absolutely. And actually, I think I was staggered by the response of my sort of very honest LinkedIn post. Had no idea it would reach so many people and sort of it means so much to so many people as well. So I'm great that it was able to, to connect you and I together, first and foremost. I think that's really positive. And yeah, I'm a woman on a mission, I think, Phil. I think I've always had what I sometimes felt like was more integrity than the average person, and always
Right.
had to throw everything into everything I do at, working at a pace that I know is can sometimes feel quite difficult to keep up with myself on, let alone expecting other people to. So yeah, I'm definitely on a mission, I would say. And I think that's partly who I am as a human, but also how passionate I am about this sector that we work in, about hospitality in that industry. And actually, there's been pros and cons to that, and the cons to that did actually lead really to the health scare that I'm sure we will talk about at some point. So, yeah,
Yep.
a lot of positives as well. And as you know, my glass is always half full.
First, absolutely. That's definitely, we've not known each other very long, but you are, I think your glass is more than half full, frankly. But
it's brimming, actually, probably.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I came up with, I was having this conversation with somebody else on somebody else's podcast once upon a time, and I came up with this saying, because I'm a glass half full kind of a guy. And, but actually, I came up with, I feel like a glass is 8/10 full. And the reason why I'm not higher than that is because it's nice to get your glass topped up unexpectedly.
Oh, I
I
like
thought,
that.
yeah, I thought it was a little hospitality edge to that.
Yeah, great analogy. Very clever. I like that. Yeah, I might pinch that one, Phil. Very good.
Yeah, by all means, I don't mind pioneering cliches. That's for sure. Fabulous. Well, we will get into that, but before we get there, let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did you get into hospitality in the first place?
Oh, great question. So I get asked this a lot, and I feel like I've tried to perfect my story to slim it down a little bit, but there's no sort of fast way to say it. Ultimately, I was a fantastic child, and I had a great.
Of course.
But when I turned to be about 14, 15, my rebellious streak kicked in. And quite frankly, I hated school. Now, I've actually been to 8 schools, and that wasn't because I got kicked out of them all. I was only kicked out of one. But
Right.
because my parents moved around a bit. And actually, I thrived off that. And I do think part of the reason I have a confidence to speak to anybody today and build rapport with different types of people is because at a young age, I was sort of thrown in the deep end of lots of different schools and situations and already mixing with lots of different cultures, which I absolutely wholeheartedly love. However, from school years, I definitely did not do well. And I was actually classed as a complete outcast. One of my headmasters said I was a complete lost cause. And that was it.
Right.
I was sort of branded.
That's really motivational.
Really motivational. And I was branded at a young age that my best options were probably going into nursery school teaching, if I was lucky, or waitressing. That was kind of where I was pitched, which was bizarre because when I was much younger, and I actually was privately educated through scholarships, and we won scholarships, my sister and I was a bright kid, and I was a bright adult, but for some reason the school system let me down. Anyway,
Right.
why that matters is that at the age of 16, I actually left home. And I got a little flat,
Wow.
Bourton-on-the-Water, if anyone knows that. And I was paying my rent with dodgy checks and building up ridiculous amounts of debt, having no understanding of money or finances. And I got a job working for a small telesales agency called Silver Wings. And I will never, ever forget that company or my boss, a lady called Gillian. And she was also the first female leading role, other than my mum, I would say, that I had in my life, apart from a primary school teacher of mine. But all the other teachers in between, I just didn't find them overly inspiring.
Right.
And she was fantastic. And no matter what I was going through in my rebellious stages, and by that I'll be blunt, that included drugs, booze, boys, it was a really naughty time for me. I always went into work and I always had Gillian, and she believed in me. And so I was working full time and earning from, the age of 16, 17. Now, I always, as well as that, I always had waitressing jobs. And I was actually a waitress from the age of 13, and my grandparents owned pubs. So being in and out of hospitality from a young age, the first place I went out of hospital was a pub. That was just, it's part of my family culture. But then I linked that with this telemarketing job. And it actually, what we were doing is selling into the food service industry. And I was calling up prisons, for example, and selling sausage rolls and all this stuff, which was ironic considering how naughty I was at the weekend. But anyway, long story short, I was there for about 3 years, and Gillian, I progressed through the company. It was tiny. It was turning over £250,000 a year, which actually now I appreciate how much hard work it is just to get to £250,000 a year. So I'm not dissing it.
Yeah.
But I was actually managing the business for her. Her mum was very sick with cancer, and I was basically managing a team of 6 other people by the time I was was 19.
Wow.
A lot of these women were older than me. And one of our clients, who was a fantastic guy, again, still a really close friend of mine, called Simon Houghton Dodd, who was at Tate and Lyle, he approached me and said, look, we've got this charity business called SOFHT, real mouthful, Society of Food, Hygiene and Technology.
I can see why they abbreviated
Wow.
that.
I know. We used to call it Softy for short. And he said, why don't we need a business development manager? Would you do it? And he was offering me, 32 grand a year by the time I was 20. It was staggering. And so I said to my boss, Gillian, thank you so much, but I've got to take this job because I needed to get out of this small village mentality and all the trouble that I was getting myself into. So I took this job and I actually moved home with my parents finally, which was exactly the right thing to do. And I was traveling all over the country. I remember driving up to Newcastle and back in a day and being at Greg's head office. I had meetings at Dyson. I was running conferences and events, and I just transformed this business development of this tiny little charity, non-profit organisation. And I did that for, again, 2.5 years. I had a company car. I was probably taking home about 45 grand a year at the time I was 21. And I thought, this is bloody fantastic.
Yeah.
I was seriously outgrowing that other part of my life. And so I then...
Quickly as well, quickly.
Really quickly.
Yeah.
And then I then took the leap into London and thought, right, I've done this now. It's great. I know how to drive up the M25 and all around the country without a sat nav, because they didn't really exist then. I used to stick Post-it notes all over the steering wheel of my car for directions. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've had naps in dodgy places just to make the journey back, because I would just had no idea what I was doing. But
we just don't know how easy we've got it now, do we?
I don't know how easy you've got it. And especially someone that was, even though I've been to a few schools, I had a fairly parochial, sheltered childhood, because it was lovely. My parents are amazing. But anyway, so that was good fun. I had a couple of scrapes in between with some, the usual stories around inappropriate male figures, thinking that I was a young saleswoman that was, up for it. So I had a few of those experiences, which I think women in business would be able to talk to you about. But, all they do is just make you more switched on and stronger anyway. So not to dwell on that as a negative. But long story short, went into London, went for a job at Novus Leisure, which was the first year back in 2009, I think it was, that they were really taking this idea of putting salespeople and sales roles into Novus and expanding their sort of late night London concept and thinking about bars and clubs as pre-book sales spaces. Obviously, restaurants have been doing this for years, but this was different for the late night industry. And I took a huge pay cut down to 23 grand a year from about 40. I was bunking on my sister's. My sister was living in London already. I was bunking on her in a flat on a sofa for a few weeks. I had a sort of dodgy boyfriend that tried to move to London with me that didn't work out. And I was sort of sofa surfing around London, going into work at Novus in my little pencil skirts and giving the impression that I, knew my shit, which obviously I did. I had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. My first day of work, I got off the tube and my skirt was split from top to bottom. And this woman tapped me on the shoulder at Piccadilly Circus and said, "You do realise everyone can see your knickers?" And I had to run into Boots and beg them to sew up my skirt. And it was so embarrassing. And I thought, right, this is when you've made it. Anyway, and I did about 8 months as a sales manager for the second largest nightclub in the West End, on and on. Now it's called Piccadilly Institute. And they knew that I had a bigger experience, a broader experience than the role that I was given. So very quickly, I was running Late Night London. And I took that business. When I went in there, it was turning over about 1.2 million a year with about 4 people in the team. Literally within 3 years, it was up to about 4.5 million quid. So I sort of quadrupled sales in there, had a great team, did all the structure. I was just really good at managing people. And really good at putting the right people in the right place. And I loved sales. And sales is obviously about the relationship. I think people have different connotations with the word sales, but it is just about the relationship and building trust and empathy with your customer and your guest.
Here, yes.
Your team, that's what it is. And I was bloody good at that. And I did Late Night London, that put me on the map. And then basically I just grew through the sector. I'm going to try and keep it shorter and sweeter now, but I grew through the sector. And, I had roles like Drake & Morgan, where I was director of sales, and I implemented the sales structure from scratch. I went into Deltic Group and I was mentoring their head of sales, and again, poured over all of my knowledge across Deltic. The same with Did a lot of work with Casual Dining Group. Back in the day, I sort of started, if you know Steve Richards, I like to follow him around. But I've had the most fantastic career. And then to cut, I will tell you this little story before, and then I'll stop talking so you can get a word in. But I will tell you this story because it's great, and it's a story that I tell quite often. So because of all of this, and you've got to remember now that I'd probably done 10, 12 years straight of just work. And, I didn't do uni. I barely did college. I didn't go all traveling. I had a lot of debt when I moved to London. I kid you not, about 15 grand because I was using dodgy checks to pay rent. And all I did was graft, and I paid off all that money, and I got my own little flat at the age of 25. And I've lived on my own ever since, actually. But when I was at Drake & Morgan, and because I had just worked to the bone for all of these years and I hadn't really done the fun part of London either. I had a little bit, but I was serious about my career, and I'd done the fun part when I was 16, 17, and it didn't work out for me particularly well.
Yeah.
So, I decided at Drake & Morgan that I needed to take a break and go traveling and just book a one-way ticket to South America, because South America has been my dream. So I said to Gillian, I'm going to do this. And to be honest, Drake & Morgan was the only role I've ever had in this industry where I thought I really was going to have a breakdown. It was the most stressful, challenging role for lots of reasons. So I booked a one-way ticket to South America, but I didn't have any money, obviously, because I paid off all my debt and I was just living hand to mouth, and I was still living on my own. So Gillian said, look, we'll be your first client if you go as a freelancer. And I thought, oh, that sounds a good idea, being a consultant, because you can earn more money. You don't have to work, as many hours because you're billing for your time, and it's very strict on your time. And actually I can just get loads of cash and then bugger off to South America for 12 months, come back and then start again and just have the break I needed. So this was my master plan. And then I started to do this consultancy, and then what happened is I was getting phone calls saying, oh, we could do with your help over here, and what about coming over here? And suddenly, I was working full-time. My day rate had almost doubled, and I was earning fantastic money, and I thought, I'm not bloody going to South America, I must be mad. And I cancelled my one-way ticket to South America, and twice following in the last 7 years I've attempted to get to South America, and twice following I have also cancelled my trip.
You still haven't been?
So I still haven't been, and I still haven't been anywhere. So now I've got 20 years of work, but obviously what I've been able to do before I started Bums on Seats was I did about 2 years of just traveling Europe and taking lots of lovely long weekends on my own, because I could have done that. But anyway, so that's
it's so good for the soul. It is
so
good.
But I come from the old school breed whereby you work your nuts off until you fall over, and that's all my problem, and the idea now that we're talking, and quite right too, can I say, about wellness and remote working and flexible hours, and which is fantastic. That for me is a foreign concept.
Yeah.
It was, you get in the office early than anyone else, and you leave later than anyone else. And if you are not working like a martyr, you ain't doing your job. That was the breed that I came from. So it's interesting that I'm needing to rethink my morals and how I think we should work for my team, because if I have the same expectations on my team, no one will work for me.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. And where do you think that came from? Where do you think that ethic to just go
I think
came from?
Part of it is my personality. Ever since I was a little girl, I was a tomboy. I was very athletic as well, and I'd throw myself into everything, which means I was always injured. I'd be the one falling down Rosebery Topping when we lived in North Yorkshire because I'd be running too fast. I'm gung ho. I have no fear. I am just that person. I actually had acute renal failure. Both my kidneys failed when I was 21, and I quite genuinely my parents were told that I wasn't going to pull through. I couldn't have dialysis. I had other issues. So this was my first major health scare. But since that moment, it made me even more gung-ho and even more fearful. But actually, I drive that into work. So this perpetual desire to keep working harder and must be better and must do more, and it's just ingrained in me. And it can be really unhealthy, but it can also be fantastic. And it's just about understanding something I'm not very good at, which is thrown around a lot, which is this thing apparently called balance. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I was just about to say there's a word that you should investigate.
thing. Yeah, it's a thing. I've been told about it a lot. I've done a bit of research, trying to get there, but it's it's got to be more of a balance.
Yeah, I suppose I come from a similar school. I was always told just to get your head down, crack on, until there's nothing left to do, and there's
Yeah,
always something to do.
yeah.
But I have always had the capability to switch off, and but it's a lifesaver. And even I can read the signs when my brain is beginning to go, there's too much going on, you need to do something about this, and I'll give myself the benefit of a couple of days of just of brain relaxation time. I think that's the key thing. Physically, no problem at all, but from the brain perspective, that we're nothing without it, are we? So
I completely agree. And I genuinely think, as much as you can read about this and people talk about it and you can see it, until you experience the impact of not allowing that to happen, what my health scale, what happened to me was a build up of years really of not allowing myself to have a break, of continually just keeping going and burning out over and over and over again, and not believing that I could be any other way. I used to smoke 30 fags a day, and the idea that I would never smoke was just bonkers to me.
right,
The idea that I wouldn't go and sink bottles of wine over the weekend, and was just, of course that's what you do, that's how you relax. That I wouldn't have 8 espressos a day to keep going. I just had this life. It was okay that I only got 4 hours sleep because I had coffee and fags and booze for the next day. And I believed that I was best. I was on form when I was running in this hamster wheel in that life. And it
yeah.
was bizarre that I was so naive and that I honestly thought that that was when I was at my best.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing, isn't it? Is that again, it comes back to balance. There is a balance of, you do have to keep yourself busy because that's where the momentum comes from, and that's where you get this forward projection in your life. But at the same time, the actually the thing that helps you get there quicker is by giving yourself a break. And
Absolutely.
that comes in many forms. It's not just about going for a holiday. It is about, I don't know, the dog walk, or just getting out into, going for a walk somewhere else, or listening to some music, just not focusing on what's on your laptop or whatever. And it's much easier said than done. Speaking of the dog, she has just arrived in the studio, and she's just whimpering at me at my feet. So there we are. You've
Oh,
welcome to the show, Bella.
hello. No, I completely agree with you, and it's funny because I always put myself last. So anybody that works for me currently, or has worked for me in the past, would hopefully vouch that I know I'm a very caring manager and leader, and I do always put the team first. So when I say people over profit, that's not bullshit. I generally mean that. It is people
Yeah,
over profit. And I put my money where my mouth is on that. But when it comes to my welfare and my health, and that's the last, or it was certainly the last thing I would consider. And it's such a revelation when you have the strength, or you are forced to reverse that mindset.
mm,
Is by me being stronger and more healthy and happier and taking the time away from the business when I can, and more mindful and all of those things, everybody around me is also benefiting. So
yeah,
what I was doing before was actually harming the people that I loved the most through my own, and I had no idea that I was even doing that either. So the benefits of health and wellness, and really putting some of these things into practice and taking that break, are just literally for me life-saving.
mm. Yeah. Well, let's get on to that then. So what happened?
Yeah, so ultimately I think I've been self-destructing health-wise for probably quite some time, and I think predominantly the last 2 years. And this will take, so but time-wise, this is taking us up until about 4 months ago, 4.5 months ago.
Right.
I had a really tough COVID experience. I live on my own. I went through a really nasty breakup with my ex, which wasn't a good breakup. And I had a business to save and people's jobs to save and no support from the government. No one's unscathed. We all have horror stories from COVID, but it just all hit me at once, and I just was self-destructing, really. I was, working too much, drinking too much, smoking too much, all the usual stuff, but definitely to excess, not sleeping, very stressed, anxiety, taking sleeping pills, not actually recognizing where all these links were coming from. I've never ever suffered with anxiety in my life before. Why am I suffering from that now?
Yeah.
Just not eating crap food, just either eating nothing at all or just wanting to eat rubbish. And it's just been building up. And it was very secret. I mean, nobody at all knew what I was going through. And I mean, nobody. I didn't talk about it. I put on a brave face. I am the master at brave faces. And there was one of my team will say tits and teeth. I'm the master at that. And I'm the master at it, not because I'm trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, because I want other people to think I'm okay for them. My parents who I'm very close to, my best friends, no one knew that I was really suffering emotionally and physically. And then, long story short, it all came to a head. I was getting chest pains for a couple of days, and I was just sort of powering through, as you do. I was staying in a hotel in Holborn. I'd been out and had a few bottles of wine. It was about 8:30 at night. My chest pains were getting a lot worse, and I was starting to panic. I was trying to listen to listening to a listening book, an audio book, and I thought, this is not normal. And I knew it wasn't coronavirus or COVID related. I was taking regular tests because at this point our office was open in London. I was in and out of London. And basically called 111, and they said, we need to send paramedics. And by the time the paramedics got there, I was collapsed on the floor. I'd managed to write on my phone. So it makes me really emotional talking about it now. But I've managed to write on my phone a few words to my parents to say, don't let my death ruin your life, because I was convinced that I was going to die. Because I've honestly never had feelings like it. The chest pains and the shortness. I've never had anything like that.
Yeah.
The paramedics said they had to get the hotel manager had to, get them into the room. It was a tiny box room, and these paramedics basically saved my life, because I cannot explain to you how amazing they were. And they were two young guys, and any other time I probably would have been quite embarrassed. But they were just amazing. And my blood pressure was 250, which was cardiac arrest. And they said, they've never, as paramedics in London, they've never seen a blood pressure that high. And I'm a 36-year-old woman who should not have a blood pressure that high.
Yeah, in your prime.
I wasn't. I like to think I'm more now. And ultimately, I was rushed into hospital. And while we were in the ambulance, and the paramedics just got everything out of me, he just spoke to me, and I just broke down and just told him how much I've been struggling, and that I wanted to be different, and I wanted to make a change. And he just said, you're really brave. And he said, you're the most polite person we've ever had in an ambulance, because I just kept apologising. I could barely breathe. I was like, I'm sorry. It's like, this is our job. Anyway, I was taken into A&E, and I spent almost 12 hours, which you're not actually allowed to spend more than 12 hours in A&E, because unfortunately the first 2 drugs that they gave me in the IV I had a reaction to for my heart. So it was quite touch and go. By this point, my kidney had also failed. My other girl, one of my kidneys had failed. And my liver was because I was fueling my liver with so many booze and bad things, and my liver was not fighting any immunity, which is obviously the key job of your liver. So my liver was in a really nasty place as well, and I was just really ill, and they gave me morphine, and I was moved up to ACU. And by the time I came round, I sort of looked around this, there's only 3 other women in the room with me, and they were all very elderly. One of them was a stroke victim. And that's when I thought, oh shit, I've really messed myself up here. This isn't good. And ultimately I stayed in hospital for 4 days. And they were the most incredible hospital, incredible people. And I had, drug and alcohol counsellors come round. I had the whole works. and started to obviously tell friends and stuff what was going on. And there's two things really. I categorically screwed up my own body through high level stress, through not eating properly, through anxiety, through drinking too much, through smoking too much. I absolutely damaged my body. And over a period of time, not probably even going back to how I lived as a teenager and those formative years, all of it just came to a head. And obviously knowing that I'd had kidney failure in the past. And then the second part of that, I guess, is I possibly had issues in my heart anyway. I've had heart murmurs in the past. I possibly had a weakness. And I just remember thinking the bloody irony that I'm someone that has the biggest heart, that has a heart that's just not doing its job, because my heart valves big enough to pump blood around my body. And it was just a mess.
Right.
So literally overnight, it was like a switch went off, and I have never, to this day, I haven't picked up a cigarette. I haven't, had a late night. I haven't got pissed. I haven't, all that stuff. I just stopped there and then. And I sat my parents down and told them the truth about how I've been feeling, what's been going on. I've cut certain people and things out of my life that I knew that weren't good. And I work out 4 to 5 times a week. I've got into weights training. I'm now running. I'm doing at least a 10 and a 5K run a week as well on top of the weights training. I am booked time in my diary at work to know that, on a Friday, for example, I don't want meetings. I want to, be a CEO and be the visionary that I am, and take care of myself and not go back to working 100 hours a week, 80 hours a week, which is the reality of what I was doing. And that high stress environment, knocking all the drugs on the head, like your bloody ibuprofen every time I had the slightest pain, and my sleeping pills just because I couldn't sleep well, which I was just living on these medications all the time. The slightest sniffle, I'd be popping, flu capsules. Like, why? Not cooking, so now I only have home cooked food. I don't use Deliveroo, all these things. And I've realized that so much of it is about making better choices, and I made really bad choices, and I didn't know the impact they would have to my organs and my brain and my mind. And I can't tell you, for 6 weeks, I was going through hell because my body was in cold turkey of everything, and I was on really high heart medication and everything as well, which actually doesn't have side effects, but obviously it was just a medley, and my body was just trying to expel so much crap, really. And I had the worst 6 weeks, and I was still coming back into the business. I only took 2 weeks off work throughout all of this.
Wow.
Because you just can't take longer. And I just needed to get back in the business. But it was just, I didn't know how good I could feel. And I think that the reality is, for probably a good 4 or 5 years, I have never felt truly who I was meant to be. And the fact that the business survived that and has thrived now, and that we are in a good place with bums on seats and my team are happy. And of course, it's not been, there's many mistakes that I've made because of my lifestyle choices within the company. I could have done better, but we've done bloody well. I think is quite phenomenal, actually. And I am really proud of myself. And do you know what? I could never have said to anybody that I was proud of myself as a human before what I've been through recently, because I always know deep down that I was not a great example to others, because I always knew deep down how I was handling stress and work and life was not anything inspirational. But now I am. And that is what really matters. Not how much revenue the company makes, not how much profit we turn over, if at all any, after the last 18 months. But what really matters is how you feel and how you love yourself and how you treat other people. And actually, cutting through all the crap, that's all there is at the end of the day.
Here, and wow, like I didn't know the half of it. Obviously, I had the little bit of what you posted on LinkedIn, and we've spoken briefly in the past, but to hear it in such detail, the body is a very clever thing, isn't it? Ultimately, it does tend to tell you when enough's enough.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what happened. And in a weird way, and maybe you can probably look back on it now and reflect this way, it was a good thing that it happened.
Oh my God, 100%. And I I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. B, I got myself into that state. I am accountable. I can't blame anyone else. You can't blame other people.
Mm.
C, thank God, because they told me in no uncertain terms, in 10 years' time, you will die. You will not be here. If this had happened to me in 10 years' time, I would not have survived. That's it. That's black and white. Like when you hear that at 36, you you go, shit, that I've got no choice. And my life expectancy is lower. I'm still on heart medication. Can I reverse it? Time will tell. So yeah, but of course I'm glad it happened then, because had it have been later, it could have potentially been irrevocable. And as it stands, there's still massive opportunities and chances that I will revoke it, and I'll revoke damage. And my God, am I going to try and do that? Because as we've established, I don't quit. And it's now just channeling that desire to not quit and to succeed into the positive, into the healthy, as opposed into the things that aren't good for you. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess as well, what happens in that process is that, of course, now that you are mindful of looking after yourself better, you
Yeah.
become a better leader. You are giving yourself more time to free up that headspace to look at the bigger picture and how you can make your business better and do that thing that you want to do, which is, make the world a better place.
Yeah.
All of these things you're putting yourself into a much better position to do now, because you're first and foremost, you're looking after yourself, and a healthy you will get a lot more done than one who is not healthy.
Oh, absolutely. It's energy levels, it's just amazing. Like the weekend now, I wake up, I always wake up in the week about 5:30, 6. Weekends, I probably wake up about 7. But normally by 8 o'clock, I'm out and I'm doing a 10K trail run. And then I might be going to the gym after that for an hour. I'll do an hour of spin class, and then I'll be cleaning the house, and then I'll be popping and seeing a friend. And then and like how much more I can pack into my day is bonkers, because I'm so much healthier and so much more energized.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, if you want to be a great leader, or if you want to be fantastic in whatever your passions or enthusiasms about life is, whatever you enjoy doing, the way to do more of the good stuff is to look after your body and your mind, because the knock-on effect is just staggering. And I really wish I understood that, but I just didn't. And I think our industry as a whole, everything starts and stops with a drink, every celebration, everything is still why people don't want to work for us at the moment. We have a bad rep. It's hard work. You can't work for us and do it lightly. It takes a lot of energy and time. We don't necessarily talk to each other always in the most respectful way. I think, especially for the younger generation, there's some old school mentality, which actually we can't get away with now. And there's some bias, and there's all of these things. And hospitality, isn't the best industry to look after your health. And that's just a fact. And
Yeah.
it needs to change. It needs to change.
Yeah. And it needs to change by having conversations like this that then hopefully people listen to and take action. Ultimately, there's a lot more that we can control than we think we can. And we were just talking before we turned the microphone on around, hasn't COVID demonstrated just what an adaptable species we are?
Yeah.
We can turn so quickly, or into a different way of thinking, into a different direction. So let's use that newfound knowledge of being that way inclined, and let's almost have an amnesty. This is kind of hospitality's #MeToo moment. Let's get the dirty laundry out there as much as we can. Let's not lambast and hang people out to dry for it. It's just been, it's been ingrained, and it's been the way that people have learned in the past, but let's not make it the way that people learn in the future.
Yeah.
And if we do all of these things, then we stop alienating people, we welcome people in, we turn this into what I still think can be the greatest industry on earth,
Agree.
with what it can bring to you as a human being, but also what you can bring to other human beings. And I'm going to stop ranting.
No, Phil, please rant away, because we are in fact on the same page. And do you know what? I always say it is the most amazing industry. It's the best industry. It's the only industry that I've ever felt. I feel so connected to it. It is literally in my blood. Like I care about it so much. I really do have gas factor, give a shit. Like it's off the
Yeah.
how much I'm passionate about it. But that doesn't mean that we're blinkered about it either. And I think it takes people that love it to be able to make the change as well. And we are doing that. And there's some really positive examples of the industry and how we've come together over the last 18 months, because it's been horrific for everybody in this sector, every business owner, every worker. And I think, we have collaborated and partnered and come together in such a wonderful way. And long may that continue, because if we do that and then start tackling some of these obvious obstacles and challenges around health and wellness and hospitality, then actually that's when change does happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything you say is bang on. So yeah.
And there's definitely enough people in this industry that give a monkeys enough and care enough.
I agree. Yeah.
So let's come together and make it happen.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's my call to arms right there. Hospitality fights back. There we are.
I like that.
Let's get on.
Agree.
No, it dawned on me that we jumped straight to that really without kind of completing your story. We've talked loosely about the fact, obviously, that you are the CEO at Bums on Seats, but tell us what Bums on Seats do.
Sure, I will. So Bums on Seats is an agency, essentially, which is the first of its kind. It's an outsourced sales and strategic business development agency. So where you would outsource things like your marketing or your finance, we are the people that will go into operators, predominantly pubs, bars and restaurants, and ensure that they have the right tools or the right people or the right systems or the right process to drive organic growth. And most importantly, understand their customer and how to build those crucial long-term relationships with their guests. So I founded the company in Jan 2019 after an idea I had when I was an independent consultant, just to do what I do, but with more people. Very simple.
Right.
Came up with the name via a business mentor, a lady called Karen Davis, who I can't have to credit for the name, because I was scratching my head with her going, what the hell do I call it? And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, the thing is, Karen, all we do is put bums on seats. And she said, well, there you go.
There you are.
The name was born. And I have to say it was a stroke of genius.
Well, it kind of does exactly what it says on the tin, right?
Yeah, which is I think is very much like me. I do what I say on the tin as well. I'm a very sort of transparent, heart on your sleeve, black and white person. There's no side to me, and I think the business reflects that. And when you start a company, as you have a blank book. It's an open book. It doesn't matter what's happened before. It doesn't matter what other companies are doing or not doing. You get to decide what you want your business to represent. And for me, the culture of the company was the first thing that was absolutely unnegotiable, that we got that right. And that's everything around the hearts and minds bit. And that's why I've got the values that I've got, integrity and passion, and really forefront of our business. And lots of companies say that, of course they do, but I didn't want to just say it. You go and ask anyone who works for me, and there's 23 of us in the business now, ask any of them what are the Bums values, they should be able to tell you very easily. But more than just being able to reel them off, they genuinely mean something, and it's how we treat each other and our clients and our staff. It's a complicated business. It's a consultancy, it's an agency, it's sales, it's a bit of marketing. It's not really been done before in this way. My business model has not been done before. So I've got no bloody idea whether my commercials were right for the first 18 months. I hired consultants to begin with, although I treat them like employees. Now I've got a mix of both. But when COVID hit, no one got help from the government, because often they'd left full-time jobs to come work for me as a freelancer. So they only got university. And so the 55, 60 grand I lost last year was spent to keep my team in rent and to make sure that they could buy themselves food throughout the time that we had no clients. And I would lose that money again and again and again if that was what that meant. So I've got a team of people, a team of leaders, my leadership team, who have all worked for me almost since the beginning of the company. They are incredible, and that is just growing all the time. And underneath my leaders are our guest experience team, our sort of junior account managers, who are just phenomenal, coming up through the ranks. And it's just it's a wonderful environment, and I'm very proud of it. And ultimately, ultimately we audit businesses, we analyze businesses, and then we tell them how they can grow more sales through planning and activation and delivery. And then we train and develop them as well. So yeah, it's awesome. But do you know what? I haven't even touched the sides of where we're going to take the company, like the plans I have for next year. And
Ooh.
little irons in the fire I'm working on at the moment that I can't express enough how it is a joy that it's 24/7 for me, because all I do is think about all these opportunities, all these great people I want to connect with, all these great clients that I want to have. And we have some freaking amazing clients at the moment, and it's so exciting. And then I stay awake going, we've got to make sure we deliver for them. And, I've just put in something called Peachy Awards, where two of my team every month get £250 in cash. And that's not, for delivering for our clients. And that's a cost to me in the business. I'm not asking that from our clients, but I'm doing it because, little incentives and stuff like that go a long way. Obviously, it's not all cash. We do a lot of, I want to do a bums panto, for example, for Christmas. We do a lot of really fun stuff as well. We did a lot of fun stuff through lockdown, and I just constantly want to have a positive voice in the industry. We've got some fantastic sort of webinars, a really great big full-on module webinar coming up via Propel soon, which you'll all hear about. But we're doing a lot of sort of e-learning training with people like CPL and hopefully Flow as well. So it's just like so much more that we are going to be doing, that we are doing. We've got the best partners, the best clients, the best people. And genuinely every day, I just love it more and more. But I am learning that I also need to have some time away from it. And that's the difference that I haven't had before.
Yeah. People will love you more for it in the end, because
Well, they all
how
need
many
a break from me, Phil, to be honest.
Yeah.
You can imagine this energy level when I now don't drink caffeine, it's still the same, if not higher. So
Right, they're probably going to be like, "Oh, can you go back to drinking, please?"
yeah, I know. Yeah, could you go back to having a lie-in, please?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but that's awesome. That all sounds wonderful. And there's no question about it, in the short time that we've known each other, you are definitely one of the most positive can-do people that I've ever come across. It's really, really infectious. And I hope that people who are listening to this kind of get that infection as well. So I take my hat off to you in terms of what you've been through, and not just what you've been through from a health perspective recently, but your whole story is kind of one of overcoming adversity, and you had to go through all of that to become the person that you now are. And I love that kind of concept, that adversity should be welcomed. That sounds probably a bit steep, especially when you're talking about life and death situations. But what you learn about yourself in adversity is, there's no classroom where you can go learn that. That's
No.
just shit that happens to you, and how you deal with it, and recognizing the moments where you need to ask help and you can't deal with it yourself, and recognizing the moments when you think, right, this is going to be tough, but I think I've got this. And yeah, you've got all of that in your story, and it feels like now you have the base foundation to skyrocket yourself into just amazing things.
Oh, Phil, thank you so much. Well, look, hopefully, I can come back and we can have a catch up in a few months or something, and we can see about my progress. That would be great.
Yeah, well, you've got loads of plans for the future. We'll definitely be doing a part 2 once you get some of them in motion. But final thing before you go, what would you say to somebody who at this point in time was contemplating a career in hospitality?
Oh, I would say absolutely do it, because you're entering the industry at a point where there is a lot of change happening, and you can be pivotal in that change. So there is no better time to enter the industry and have some genuine positive impact. And it is an industry that will take care of you, and there is absolutely career progression, because I'm a classic example of that. It just does take that sort of can-do attitude and a solution-based person, I would say. But I always advocate working in the industry. I think it's incredible. And look, I think employers have never been hotter in terms of their wellness and appreciation of their staff. Everyone knows how much more we need to do. So there's a lot more care. There's definitely more career progression. There's roles that are being created for marketing, sales, operations that just didn't exist or weren't needed before, because of how consumer behavior has changed in the last 18 months. So it's a fantastic time to join the sector. But of course, it will always be a sector that determines hard work and a solution-based based thinker. So and someone that has got bags of personality. So if that's you, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
There's also a couple of really good mentors in the industry, like you and me, Phil, which I guess,
Of course.
if that doesn't entice you, then nothing will.
Yeah, absolutely. But actually, mentors like us grow on trees in the industry. There's so many good people. At the end of the day, it's about being hospitable. That's why you come into this industry. So you're going to come into contact with people who are used to giving you their time.
Yeah.
That's just in the psyche. But not to say that you and I are not the greatest mentors on planet Earth, because
we're up there. We're amongst a lot of others. You're absolutely right. We are.
In my own house, I'm definitely in the top 2. Yeah.
I'm fine. I live on my own. I'm always.
Yeah, bless you. You're the number 1.
I'm the number 1. Oh dear, Phil, it's been
fantastic.
So much for having me. I've had a really great time chatting away to you. So yeah, hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely, and I massively appreciate you being so open with your story today, and hopefully some people will take some inspiration from it. I certainly have.
Oh, thank you.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye. And there we have it. What an absolute inspiration Amber is, and we could all learn a huge valuable lesson from her. Look after your health and yourself, and you'll do your best work. Life really is too short. Once again, a huge thank you to Amber for sharing her story so openly. Join us again next week for more stories from hospitality. But until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.